Sean, our team has spent the last few hours walking with you through the backstacks and the catacombs of the American Museum of Natural History. And the size and the breadth and the scope of this collection, I knew it was big, and I'm still gobsmacked. I am curious what you think of as the priorities for this incredible collection in its storage, and its continuation, and in its dissemination.
No, I think this is an amazing moment to have a natural history collection. We have over 30 million objects and specimens, and they really tell the history of the planet and the history of life on the planet. And that's a number that you can really think of as a large data set, right? It gives us information where we can begin to, if you could take in all of the information there, you can begin to see patterns of change over time. With each specimen comes information about the environmental conditions under which that specimen was collected. And so
because you guys have been collecting for so long.
We've been collecting for 150 years. So we have lots of longitudinal data of different parts of the world. And so one of our priorities is to digitize all of that information, to make it available for researchers to ask new types of scientific questions that involve looking for patterns, looking for relationships over time, but then also to share it with educators, with teachers, with students, with families who may be interested in doing their own exploration of the collection, and to some degree actually kind of pulling in specimens for them to examine more closely, to curate their own digital collections. They have lots of possibilities.
Well, I mean, with 20 plus buildings on this site and 30 million specimens, there's still not enough room for everyone to come see what's going on or to do the research in situ here in the building.
Exactly, that there are the ability to share things so that scientists can have access to detailed information about objects in the collection from their home institutions. That's something that really will accelerate the rate of discovery that you can do with a collection like this.
I would imagine you're also playing around with different modalities of how that information presents itself on a computer, how people interact, how they are able to sort of, I'd say, surf through your collection.
Right, and this is a place where new technology tools are changing the ways in which we can both present information in terms of the images, but then also to search and organize the information. So if you imagine having AI-powered tools that can do natural language searches so that you can find information and display it in new and different ways. And for us, of course, the challenge is that our collection spans things, even just thinking of the animal collection we have, from termites to dinosaur bones.
Yeah.
Right? So the scales of, physical scales of things that we have, the types of information you want for each of those is going to be different. And so to have something where we organize all of that information, make it sort of seamlessly searchable from the outside, even though the nuances of differences between different types of specimens is going to span a huge range.
I think most people don't quite realize that the American Museum of Natural History became a museum at a time when it was inventing the idea of a museum.
Right, that the tradition of collecting natural history objects and sort of having organized institutions that combine scientific research, public engagement, and education really is a sort of late 18th, 19th century concept. And so this museum, which dates from the mid-19th century, is really at the leading edge of how do you combine scientific research and public engagement in the same institution.
But it doesn't sound like you guys had a static definition then that you're still holding to. It sounds like the museum is still open to the whole idea of what a museum is and how it operates.
Exactly. I think it's one of the things that I think is just terrific in being an institution enmeshed in and dedicated to science, is that our fundamental mission, which is discovery, dissemination, interpretation of knowledge about the natural world, humans, and the universe, still is true today. The way that you do it evolves and changes as scientific techniques and methods changes, as technology enables us to investigate in different ways, to bring information forward in different ways. So I think we can still be true to the mission that's been part of our tradition for 150 years, yet combine it with the tools that we have today to do just amazing new and exciting things.
I think when most people follow science and museums in the popular press, they think of it as a competitive business. Who's got the first scoop? Who's discovered the first thing? But the reality is that it's a far more, while there is friendly competition between institutions, it's a far more collaborative world than we would be led to believe.
Right, and especially in this effort as we begin thinking of the scientific information that we can unlock from our collection. So we have over 30 million objects in our collection. If you look at the top 75 largest museum collections in the world, they're well over 1 billion specimens, objects and specimens in the collection. And so we are very much in conversation and collaboration with our partners at institutions around the world with the idea that we share this information, because the more we can share the information, the larger we build that data set, the more interesting and I think the more detailed scientific questions we're going to be able to solve.
Okay, so I will tell you, like when I was making Mythbusters, we had a couple of stories in which we had to do 1 million of something. Mm-hmm. And despite our mathematical prognostications about how to service it with the right number of people, we were always completely flummoxed by how much labor it took to do 1 million of something. You've got 30 million objects to scan or photograph or digitize. How do you even approach that problem?
Right, and initially it is taking on things or putting things into different categories based on both the importance and a prioritization of the specimens, but then also how we can examine and get information. So for example, there's some systems where flat scanning 2D images capture a lot of information of what we need. Others where that actually leaves out a lot of detail, because if you don't have depth on a sample, you miss information. So sort of recognizing and beginning to group things on what types of information collecting is going to be most important. Then also realizing that and I've been thinking of this as a sort of pyramid project, so that we want basic information in a digital database about everything in our collection. We'll have 2D images for a significant portion of our collection. And eventually, when it comes down to 3D CAT scan detailed information, there'll be a
very select, because it's a time
things that we have for those. But there's always the opportunity for scientists to go and to find if there's something that they'd like to get that high detailed, high resolution information. They can always go back and get that scan for specific items. But sort of thinking that we build up tiers of information as we move forward through the project.
Is there a place for the latest buzzword we're all talking about, AI, in examining, managing, or taking a look at the museum's collection?
So, AI is an important tool both for how we collect information in some places. In particular, for example, reading labels and interpreting labels.
Oh, right. I was looking at these. You've got some of the tiniest handwriting I can imagine on some of these.
Exactly. And so sort of the ability to do some extraction of information from there.
Faster than a person could do it.
Faster.
Amazing.
And so there are going to be some important tools in both the ways in which images are processed and
it may even be able to help you categorize, of course.
Exactly. And then I think on the other end, the ability to probe and search for patterns in the collection is something that these giant data sets is something that really AI is perfect for helping us to identify things that we might not have seen otherwise, to find correlations between things that are not necessarily obvious, to point us to directions where we should be looking at things more closely.
I think a lot of people think of big institutions, especially one as big and august as the AMNH, think of them as probably rigid ideas of a specific way of being a museum. And the reality is that it is far more plastic than I had any idea of. You guys are really open to shifting and changing your priorities based on how things are going and basing on what you're actually learning about the world.
Right. And actually one of the things I think it's actually just exciting about the lab that we're in is that we're in a historic building with these cases of samples, some of which were collected hundreds of years ago. And then we're going to be using cutting edge tools that are also in the same historic building that are generating these images that are the sort of what is the future uses of this as we look forward. And all of that happens within the tradition of the museum.
Sean, it's so thrilling and inspiring. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you so much for watching that video. If while watching any of my videos you like
any of the t-shirts that you see me wearing, well, you can go buy them. And there's two places you can get them. First, you can go to tested-store.com, a web address that my crew laughs is one of the hardest things for me to remember in my whole brain. But now they've given me a second URL. You can now go to adamsavage.com and buy any of the t-shirts you see me wearing on this channel. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff there too. Thanks.